Good morning, class. For this last video for week 11, I'll be walking you through the steps to writing a successful glossary for the expose assignment. The glossary should have 6 terms, each taken from one of the 6 sources that are in your annotated bibliography. In an earlier video, I walked students through writing a successful annotated bibliography using a scholarly source about social space. And so I've taken social space as a term from that article, and now I am putting it in an entry in my glossary. From week 10, you know that the terms of your glossary should be bolded and that the definitions and additional material should be unbolded next to it. You will not be writing glossaries with bullets. These bullets are meant to help you think about how to write a glossary, but you will of course be using unbolded, unbulleted paragraph blocks in the rough draft and final draft of the expose assignment. When you are writing a successful glossary, each term should be defined in your own language. The way that I have defined social space in my own words is the way that a particular place, like the Lake District, becomes meaningful, useful, or notable to a society. The way that I personally like to think of social space as a concept is the way that we as a society value certain places over others. For many of you, before the very unfortunate outbreak of coronavirus, spring break was likely going to take place, at least partially, on a beach. A beach is not just a place of sand next to an ocean in our society. It's a place where many of us like to spend time with friends, relax. We see it as a place of luxury and fun. This is the way in which a place like a beach becomes a social space. That is to say, an area that has some kind of meaning beyond just being a location on a map. So that's the way that I would define social space in my own language. A place like Lake District, for instance, has its own meaning to English society, especially in the late 1700s, early 1800s, when people like William Wordsworth are visiting there. Each glossary entry should have a quote from the appropriate source about the keyword. All of you should be transitioning into your quotes. David Cooper, the author of the article that I cited in the annotated bibliography, which provides social space as a term, David Cooper cites the work of Henry Lefebvre, and I apologize to those of you who actually speak French. I do not. I think it's Lefebvre. David Cooper cites the work of Henry Lefebvre, who defines social space, in quotes, according to 3 aspects. And you can see that this is probably more complicated than your quote will be, but it's useful to see. David Cooper is citing another expert, Henry Lefebvre, to make a definition. According to David Cooper, citing Henry Lefebvre, social space is social practice. You can see you have a quote followed by another quote. Social practice, or the perceived spaces of everyday activity. Representations of space, or the conceptualized space, mapped out by government and other official agencies, and the representational spaces experienced by inhabitants and which consist of an overlaying of the physical with the imaginative. Okay, that's a lot, but it is, at least, even in being complicated and a lot, it is a robust definition that helps give more foundation to the way that I understand this term. Finally, for all of your glossary terms, you should be analyzing the language from the quote. That is, how is the information presented? Why is the information presented that way by the author? With special attention paid to the disciplinary position of the author. Remember that we established in the previous video that the author of this article, David Cooper, is a scholar of literary criticism. The information is presented as a quote from another expert. Cooper chooses this approach because he is relying on the spatial theory of Henry Lefebvre. He is taking another scholar's expertise and using it in his own work about William Wordsworth. Cooper is a literary scholar who is borrowing the theory of another expert to make an argument about how Wordsworth poetry remakes the significance of a place like the Lake District. In other words, William Wordsworth's poetry is trying to give fresh meaning to a place like the Lake District. And that is how you would write a successful glossary using the example of social space.